America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. Hewitt live inside the Beltway, joined by Alaska Senator Dan Sullivan. Good morning, Senator Sullivan. How go you this morning?
Good morning, Hugh. I'm doing great. Merry Christmas, and I hope you and your family are doing well as well.
We are, and the Browns are even a little bit better, and the Ohio State Buckeyes have been resurrected, so I like that too. Senator...
Well, you know what? I wanted to mention, I know you and I love to talk football. I am actually going to the greatest game, in my view, of the year. It's a little underrated. I go every year with my dad, a Navy veteran, my brother Sean, a bunch of my siblings. Army-Navy this weekend. It's going to be awesome. Best game.
Go Navy, beat Army.
Go Navy, beat Army. I love that.
My son will be there. My son-in-law can't make it this year, both active duty Navy, and we are very, very pro-Navy here. You're right. Go Navy, beat Army, but I'm glad. I've only been once. It's quite the spectacle.
Oh,
Senator.
You got to go. You need to go. Come with me. I go every year. Unfortunately, my dad passed away 2 years ago. It's the greatest sporting event in America. Anytime you want to come, I'll be there. So
thank you, Senator. Now I want to cover three things with you: Georgia and Herschel. And the difference of 50-50 Senate makes to 51-49. Number two, the deal that President Biden is supposed to be doing in Alaska, and then I want to talk about the Chi-Coms and what I'm afraid is going to be another Tiananmen Square. Let's start with Georgia. People are voting as we speak. They're standing in line. It's raining a little bit. How important is it that Herschel win?
So important. And, like a lot of my fellow Republican senators, I campaigned all over the country to help candidates. This fall, it was disappointing. We know that we didn't take the majority, but as you just mentioned, being 50-50 is way more important for us, for America, than being 51-49, and it's all about power in the Senate. And it sounds technical, but let me just give you one example. If we're 50-50, then every committee in the U.S. Senate is split evenly. That gives us way more power if we don't have a split in the committees. And so that's just one of many examples where we can do a lot more to prevent Biden's radical nominees becoming confirmed by the Senate, radical legislation. It makes it much harder for them to implement their radical anti-American agenda if we're 50-50.
Okay, that's a reason enough, Georgia, to get out there and vote and stand in line even if it's raining. Second,
and we know people in Georgia. They've had a lot of elections over the last couple of years. We know it. We appreciate all that you've done, but please get out there and vote for Herschel.
One more time. Get it one more time. Then you can rest for 2 years, and you will not be bombarded. In fact, 2 years from now, I don't think anyone's up. Okay, Senator Sullivan, let's talk now about Alaska and oil drilling. President Biden and his team keep going out and saying there are thousands and thousands of unused permits. Is he actually obstructing oil and gas development in Alaska?
110%, Hugh. That's 110%. Look, there are a lot of Biden policy disasters, but his energy policy is the biggest disaster of them all from day one. And I've seen this not just in America, but expressly in Alaska. They have focused on shutting down or delaying production of American energy, shutting down or killing American energy infrastructure, going to American banks and financial institutions, and believe it or not, pressuring them not to invest in the American energy sector. And then you see what they do. They go bend the knee. Literally, the President of the United States bent the knee in Saudi Arabia, embarrassing as hell for our country, and bend the knee to dictators to produce more oil. I mean, it is unbelievable. You saw what they just did with Venezuela. But in Alaska, we got ANWR passed, right? Into law. 2 lease sales mandated by the Congress. Day one, the President suspended those. You can't suspend those, right? That's in the law. The President's job is to faithfully execute the laws of our nation, not to block them. And then now we have this incredible project called the Willow project. It has been in permitting, if you can believe this, Hugh, for almost 20 years. It's in the National Petroleum Reserve of Alaska. It is ready to go. If the Biden administration gives the green light on this, it will produce over 2,500 jobs, and at peak production, Willow will produce 190,000 barrels a day, and they're delaying it. They're green-lighting Venezuela, and they're delaying the Willow project. Every one of your listeners should call these guys saying, let the Willow project and American energy, American workers, and by the way, The Willow project is the most environmentally responsible, sensitive, major oil and gas project on the planet Earth. Lowest greenhouse gas emissions of any major project in the world. Meanwhile, Venezuela, 18 times more polluting than the average American energy project. This is the definition of policy insanity.
So, Senator, when you hear the president say, we've given thousands of permits that the oil and gas industry isn't using, they should use those first, or you hear Karine doing that at the White House, what should the follow-up question be to focus folks on the facts of their obstruction as opposed to their talking point deflection?
Let me give you three. First, Mr. President, approve the Willow project, almost 200,000 barrels a day. I pressed the President of the United States directly on this project 18 months ago. Directly. I even gave him a memo on it. He said he wasn't aware of it, which I believe. He's not aware of a lot of things. And 2 days later, his White House called me saying the President's going to support Willow. Okay? End of story. When I worked for George W. Bush, if the President of the United States told 2 U.S. senators and a congressman he was going to do something, that was it. So number one, approve Willow. That's the biggest American energy project in the country right now, ready to go, been in permitting for almost 20 years. Secondly, this president has put out the lowest amount of leases since any president since World War II. That is a fact. And the third one they should be pressed on. Now, this is a little more technical, but it's in the energy sector. There are things, these aren't just the leases, there are these things, once you get a lease, are called applications to drill. Okay? That's actually the real thing that needs to be approved. There are 8,000 applications to drill, including in Alaska, that this administration is sitting on. That's how you get production going. The applications to drill.
I knew that, but
sitting on.
We needed the specifics. Now, before we run out of time, I want to ask you about the Chi-Coms. You signed a letter, I believe you authored it, and you got 41 co-signers, to the Chinese ambassador warning them against a Tiananmen Square repeat. Did you get an answer, Senator?
They said they were going to give us an answer within a couple hours. We haven't gotten any answer for that yet. But Ambassador, if you're listening, or any other Communist Party, we want an answer, right? We want an answer. Our letter was very simple. By the way, almost half the Senate, including a lot of Dems, signed on to my letter, and it essentially just said we're watching very closely these historic protests. Last time you had protests of this magnitude, you undertook a violent crackdown, 1989, Tiananmen Square, that killed hundreds, if not thousands, of peacefully protesting students, and we caution the Chinese Communist Party in the strongest possible terms not to kill your people again simply because they want more freedom. You know, Hugh, this goes exactly to the biggest vulnerability Xi Jinping has, and it's this. These guys fear their own people. They fear their own people, and we need to exploit that vulnerability every opportunity we can.
Okay, Senator, I talked to Len Kordakovsky yesterday about the cracks in the Iranian regime's ability to hold their people down. They are forming. They're spider-like. Do you think that regime is close to tumbling?
Not yet. Not yet, but it's the same issue. The terrorist regime in Iran, the biggest thing they fear is their own people. And it's the same thing we need to be doing with regard to China. When the protesters take to the streets, these brave Iranian women, I mean, you want to talk about courage? When they take to the streets, the United States needs to lift its voice in support of these kind of heroes, in my view. That was the purpose of the letter we sent to the Chinese Communist Party. I thought that world leaders' response to the protests in Beijing and throughout China, to the protests in Iran, have been much too tepid, including from Joe Biden. World leaders need to speak up and actually show support for these brave people who are who are pushing for freedom. That was the point of our letter to the Chinese Communist Party, and we need to do it in Iran. So to answer your question, I don't think it's cracking yet, but you never know, and we need to support them.
Last question, Senator, completely political. Any chance you run for president in 2024?
No.